to a extra meeting, not on our usual night after a holiday. So I appreciate this is a hard meeting to get to for everyone. So thanks for being here. I'll go ahead and read my required language here. This meeting is being held pursuant to and in compliance with emergency ordinance number 20-A14, an emergency ordinance to ensure the continuity of government during the COVID-19 disaster. The committee members who are electronically present at this meeting are me, Allie Pesh. We have John McKeon, Brian Day, David Mitchell, Doug Bates, Joe Fore, Josh Rector, Costas Albertus, Mike Kunkel, Sandy Hausman, Sean Bird, and Tom Loach. And we also have Ann Malik, our representative on the Board of Supervisors, and Jenny Moore, our Planning Commission representative. I think I got everybody. County staff in attendance for this meeting are Vivian Groeschel, Rachel Falkenstein, and I see Charles Rapp. Hi. All right, I think that's it. The persons responsible for receiving public comment are the Crozet Community Advisory Committee. The opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting are posted on the Albemarle County calendar and on the Crozet Master Plan update page at publicinput.com/imaginecrozet. So during this meeting, when we're discussing things, which is probably most of the meeting, we invite you attendees, or who I'm talking to now, as well as obviously the panelists and the committee members. You can share your comments or questions by clicking the raise hand button at the bottom of your toolbar, and that will notify the meeting facilitator, Vivian, that you would like to speak, and you will be placed in the queue. If you're joining by phone, press 9 to raise your hand and be placed in the queue to speak. Verbal questions and comments are the preferred method of participation, but alternatively, you can send a question through the chat box and we can respond via the chat and read the question or comment aloud. If several similar questions or comments are submitted, we can summarize. But I do appreciate you guys writing in the chat and raising your hand when you have something to say. That's certainly how we would do it if we were in person. So I appreciate that working on Zoom. All right, so next is the minutes as usual. Thank you, Joe and Anne, for taking notes and getting those out. I thought they looked good, but if anybody wants to move to approve those, now's the time.
So moved.
Thanks. I need a second. Anybody want a second?
Whoever read the minutes.
I'll second. I'll second.
Thanks.
And thanks for adding those comments. Those were very helpful.
All right. All in favor of approving the minutes? You can we unmute and say aye?
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So tonight, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again to staff and all of you guys for giving us this kind of extra meeting to wrap up the land use updates for the master plan. I felt like we had a lot of content to get through and a lot of voices. So I appreciate having this extra time to kind of go back through everything quickly and get some feel for what the committee and the community, as far as our role in this update, kind of where the majority's opinions stand on a lot of these proposals. So okay, so what my plan is to just sort of go through. We have the resolutions, we have a lot of proposed changes, and I have gotten a lot of feedback from both committee members and citizens that have emailed me, responded to my emails, and also written to me on Nextdoor and Facebook. So I have some feedback, but I really wanted to kind of get it all on the record with the planners here, and make sure we've covered all of it. So I don't know if anybody wants to chime in at this point and let me know how that sounds to you guys. And then if, we can kind of come to a consensus on the resolutions that were sent out, we can certainly send both forward to the Planning Commission after a vote, or we can, refine them and settle on one document. We could write however many we want. We can email them, the decision makers, individually. So whatever works, but I'd love some input from you guys. Tom?
Yeah, I think your suggestion to go through the land use changes, we've talked to them about them enough. We discussed them. I think we should go through item by item for a vote and see whether to include them or not. I mean, the fact of the matter is we have a master plan. This is not our first rodeo. We already have a master plan that's served the community well for 15 years now. So I think we just should get down, vote on those, and then we'll get to the resolutions later. Thanks.
Thanks. How do anybody else have, how does that sound to you all, that if we just go through and vote on these, as far as whether or not we like them as part of the 2021 master plan? Anne?
My request would be that we ask for any clarifying questions before each one is voted on, because there may be some, I think there were some outstanding facts that perhaps staff would have some answers to based upon our last meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, can I just get a sounds good from people? Like, let's go ahead and go through these. Okay.
Charge on.
Okay. So I'm just going to start at the top, which happens to be a big one, the downtown neighborhood overlay, which was proposed for neighborhoods surrounding downtown and includes some criteria for bonus density. Last meeting, we had a pretty clear majority vote for not including Pleasant Green in that overlay, but I think tonight we could actually just vote on whether or not we like the overlay as proposed at all. Are there any questions or comments before we vote on whether or not we like the proposed overlay?
I really think that if we're going to vote on the overlay, we ought to vote on it not including Pleasant Green.
Well, we already did that, right? What do you mean, Brian?
Just to make absolutely clear that somebody doesn't look at this meeting, the minutes of this meeting, and not understand that at the last meeting, everybody felt basically that Pleasant Green should not be included.
Yeah, I mean, we can take two votes now. We can repeat the vote from last time. That I guess there can be, you support the overlay, but only without including Pleasant Green, or you support the overlay as written, or you don't support the overlay at all. Is that fair? Tom, did you have a comment? Oh, and Joe's too.
Yeah, I mean, if they're through with generic questions for staff, would like to chime in, but if other people have questions about the designation or anything, then let them go first.
Joe, what's your thought?
Yeah, mine was the question. I think this was brought up by Anne and several other folks last time, was the concern about that third category of, the infill that would preserve existing housing stock, but it didn't seem to, it suggested a loophole for retaining the original structures, which I think we all agreed that was kind of the whole intent, was to preserve historic and existing structures. And so
Yeah.
I don't know if staff has any further clarification, if Rachel or anybody else, if that language has been tweaked or modified, because it seemed like last time that third category of the infill was a big loophole here. And I think a lot of people were hung up on that.
Rachel or Charles, do you have?
We haven't made any changes to our recommendation at this point. We are going to take all the feedback and then go kind of back to the drawing board before we go to the planning commission to see if we need to make any tweaks. That was not intended as a loophole. So there were 3 categories included in the downtown overlay of types of development that could be considered. Infill was one of them. Conversion was another, and addition of an accessory was another. So those are not criteria. Those are types of development that could be included.
So I would maybe, Allie, if we're thinking about how this moves forward, maybe one proposal is if we could vote on, the neighborhood overlay, and one might be a suggestion that we actually eliminate the infill category. It's one idea is,
Yeah,
look, if the whole purpose is this special category, maybe we would only recommend it. I understand there might be people who don't like it at all, but maybe that's another option.
I think to be clear, when we are, if the staff isn't planning on making any changes to their recommendations before this moves forward to the planning commission, we really just need to vote on what's written. And, our verbal feedback can be, I might have voted the other way if this verbiage was changed or if that category was eliminated, but we can only vote on this. If this is what's going forward, then I think we need to just vote on what's there.
That makes sense.
I heard Rachel say something different. So if she could clarify, I heard her say that after this public wrap up is done, they will be going back and making sure developing the new text. And then we'll see that as it goes forward to the planning commission. Rachel, am I off on that?
I'm planning to get my team together and discuss all the feedback we've heard and evaluate whether or not we should make changes. I can't say one way or another whether or not we will, because we just haven't done that yet. We wanted to wait for this meeting first.
Okay, well, so I think that's what we'll have to do. If we'll just vote on this, and then if, like you heard Joe's comment that he might have voted a different way if something was changed, and you can take that into consideration. Sandy?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I know what I'm voting on here.
Yeah.
Because I don't like the idea of infill. I don't think there are adequate protections for existing residents. And I'm not crazy about the idea of turning existing housing into multifamily housing. Wasn't that one aspect of this idea?
Mm-hmm.
So if I vote no, then I've covered those objections, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing I don't understand, Rachel, and you can just make a note of this for your tweaking, is we're building all these townhouses, these new townhouses, and they're not going to be very different in price, I wouldn't think, from a lot of the existing houses in the overlay district. So I don't really understand why we need an overlay district. I don't see it. Maybe to protect these houses so they don't get knocked down to build condominiums, or I don't really.
I think that was part of the goal.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the overlay district with a couple of modifications could help protect existing housing. I don't have too much trouble with some houses getting subdivided or having additional units. But I think maybe the way the vote on this overlay district ought to be, if we're only in favor of it, if it doesn't include Pleasant Green, and if it doesn't include infill housing, then it offers the opportunity for protecting and preserving the housing stock that we really wanted to keep and preserve to begin with.
Okay, well, I'm gonna, Tom.
Can I ask you one basic question to the staff? Whose plan is this? The original master plan and the 5 and the 10 plan came out of the community, and the staff was there to advise us if what we were doing was consistent with the county policy. I may have heard it wrong, but I heard that you're going to go back and see if you want to tweak it or not. So whose plan is this anyhow?
This is the community's plan. So we're taking all the feedback we've heard, the CAC's feedback, the feedback we heard from the community at our broader workshops we did earlier. And one of the themes we heard was about housing choice, affordable housing, and preservation of housing downtown. So that was the intent of this district, but we'll take your feedback.
Yeah.
We'll carry that forward.
Yeah, well,
Can I?
yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Well, as far as the overlay district, I think as somebody stated, if it's for protection, that's one thing. If this is a way of increasing affordable housing, I would just make the comment, that the state of the affordable housing in the county is just horrendous. I mean, we just found out that only 21 affordable houses have been built. And when I did this study for the last 20 years, there should have been over 300 affordable units under the 15% proffers. So if we're talking about affordable housing, I think the county has a hell of a lot of nerve to come to us about affordable housing at this time. That said, I don't agree with the overlay for higher density. And why don't I agree with it? One of the main reasons is it includes a lot of the older neighborhoods that do not have sidewalks, curb, and gutter. If you want to have a model neighborhood, then you want to have a walkable neighborhood, then you have to have those pieces of infrastructure in place. If the county wants to come back, and retrofit those older neighborhoods with the appropriate infrastructure, that's one thing. But you can't start putting in your higher density housing and you're missing middle housing, and 30 foot of sidewalk and say, well, I've done my job. I don't think that's fair. We have older neighborhoods. That doesn't make them lesser neighborhoods. And I don't want our neighborhoods and our children in those neighborhoods to become traffic calming devices. Thank you.
All right, well, I think what I'm going to do is have us vote twice. Vote, do you approve, do you like the overlay district as proposed? And then we can do a second vote if it was these two changes. Does that work for you all? Okay. I have one hand raised in the attendees. Charles, I don't know if you have a comment on the overlay district or if you have something to say about a different category, just maybe you could let me know in the chat if you would like to speak now or later. And I'm reading Cliff's comment in the Q&A. What response do we have from non-CAC members? Well, like Rachel said, we have all the other community engagement sessions and the public input site and everybody writing in and talking, chatting now. So anyway, all right, let's go ahead and, all right, relating to G2. So, okay, when we get to that G2 change, I'll get Charles unmuted so he can comment. And somebody else here, Valerie.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to add a comment about Tom's comment, which I think is correct in some respects about the affordable housing. He's right that unfortunately the affordable housing program that has been underway in the county for the last 15 or so years really isn't working anywhere near like it's supposed to. There's a lot of reasons why, and a lot of reasons I think some people many of us don't understand. The builders are building the units like they're required, but somehow there's not being a matchup. And I see this proposal as just being another tool in the county's toolbox to try and provide another avenue for affordable housing as part of trying to address the need, but also because it helps some of these folks with historic houses that might be hard to keep them maintained, and provides an opportunity but not a requirement for them to try to provide some affordable units. So I just wanted to provide a little different perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Valerie. Okay, let's, Sandy, did you have one more thing, or should we vote?
No, you go ahead. I think we can vote.
Sorry, thanks. All right, so I would like to do it without, I'd like to do these votes like with a real count. So I know some of you guys don't have your video on, so I think if we can unmute or raise hands, and Joe, if you can make a tally of yeses and nos, we can put them in the minutes with, like we would. So, all right, so all those in favor of the downtown neighborhood overlay as written, you can raise your hand now or unmute if your video is off. All right, so we've got David, Josh, and Valerie. All right, all those opposed or not in favor of the downtown neighborhood just overlay as written?
Hausman is voting
No.
for no.
Okay, so Sean, John, Tom, Costas, Doug, Joe, Sandy, Brian. All right. Anybody abstaining? I don't see anybody abstaining. Okay. So then we can vote again. I guess you guys tell me the no Pleasant Green on the map and the no infill. Are those the two changes we would that might change people's votes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And describe again what you mean by no infill. So
Just the third provision that allows for infill housing, which then could encourage people to tear down housing and do
oh,
it.
okay, yeah.
Um,
So
excluded.
having some words not meant to encourage tear downs, or saying it's not going to be approved if you're tearing down everything. Yeah, the tear down has been a concern from the very, very beginning on this thing. So, okay, no.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, though. I think we need a better definition of infill. Are we talking about retaining existing homes and building additional properties in the backyard, for example? Or
But
in a
that's already
side lot?
captured by the accessory structures, which is already one of the options, right? It's subdividing accessory structures, or the third category is this infill development. So I think what for example, my specific proposal was just cutting that third category and retaining those first two. That was my thought.
Okay.
Yep.
And is anybody not concerned when you have these single family homes then become multifamily, you have extra cars and there's not necessarily parking for extra cars. You're creating more density without changing the fundamental infrastructure of a neighborhood. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's what Tom was saying about, St. George Avenue doesn't, or, Hilltop, Myrtle don't have the sidewalks existing. So if they just put it in front of the new construction, is that enough? Same with parking. Tom and Sean, I saw your hands up. And I also wanted to add, because I didn't say this out loud, attendees are welcome to add their vote in the chat. I would add it in the chat and say exactly what your vote is, because once it goes into the minutes, it's hard to tell. If you just say no or yes, we don't have a record of what you were saying no to. Okay, Sean and Tom.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay.
Just on the infill question, I think it's a little bit up for debate as to how we are going to define it, because when I think of infill, I know on St. George and in some other streets that are somewhat close to downtown, they're actually empty lots that are being purchased and built upon, and nothing's actually being torn down. It's just building on an empty lot, which in my mind I'd be supportive of. So I think it's hard to, Infill may be sort of a loaded term, and I don't know if we want to parse that out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we could just leave it up to the staff to make sense of our comments, and we could just have a vote saying, I would support the overlay district with a few tweaks, and leave it at that. David?
Well, I would just suggest, why don't you say it qualifies for infill if it's a lot that's been vacant for 5 years or some period of time.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's going to buy a piece of property and sit on it for 5 years if they don't already own it, or if, I mean, you know, house burns down, now it's a vacant lot. They're supposed to be punished because their house burned down. I mean,
No, of
I
course
think
not.
that's the way to tweak the infill.
So maybe I think Ally may have the right solution here, which is maybe we just vote without saying we eliminate a specific provision, but just say we'd like to see two changes. One, no Pleasant Green, and two, something to prevent the tear down and rebuild, but maybe allowing for, as David Schauner pointed out, some sort of infill that truly is, you know, vacant lot infill.
Yeah.
I think the protection in the overlay district has to be well articulated. I agree with David. If it's a you know, an empty lot, you know, fine. You know, it's up to the owner to build this, you know, and hopefully that would be consistent with the neighborhood, you know what I mean, and with the ability to support it infrastructure wise. But again, I think, you know, if we do it, those protections for those neighborhoods, and I'm not, you know, in the district, and so probably even some of the other neighborhoods like Orchard Acres and Brookwood in there, that, you know, that we have a degree of protecting those neighborhoods.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's vote on what Joe just said. So I think, so we'll say if you would support the overlay without Pleasant Green and with some more clarifications, you know, to really, really avoid this being a loophole, then raise your hand now.
Can we, instead of using the word clarifications, can we say protections? I mean, this is
Yeah.
what's missing is the
Protections, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, protections and no overlay.
Mhm.
I mean, no Pleasant Green.
Mhm.
Raise your hand if you're in support of that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so we've got Tom, Joe, everybody,
And Brian.
and Brian. Okay, it looks like, all right, any opposed? Even just opposed to the overlay no matter what? Anybody? Okay,
So all support.
Ally,
yeah,
just very quickly, I just consider the overlay and these other discussions to be secondary to the infrastructure question.
Yeah.
Unless the infrastructure question is addressed, these just aren't very much of very much interest.
so does that mean that you're opposed to the overlay?
No, not without the Pleasant
Okay.
Green and density. I'm going to say go ahead, but
Okay.
what I'm trying to say is it's not a very high priority.
Okay, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, yeah, but this is what they're proposing to you know, put to a vote. You know, Anne's only one vote, so she knows what we think, but if the staff goes ahead recommending this to the other supervisors, we want to have some clear direction from this, you know, from this committee and what we've gotten from citizens to specifically, even though this is, yeah, maybe not our biggest concern right now. Like we have to have, you know, my goal is to have specific feedback for the staff. And if it goes forward as this, then for Anne's colleagues on the board. All right, I think we can move on. But again, if anybody, an attendee wants to chime in, go ahead and put it in the record in the chat. What information do CCAC members have from the community? I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I get emails often, you know, I know like Cliff, you have written to me, and I get, I read the comments on Nextdoor. I read the letters to the editor, and I talk to people. So that's why we're just a committee, and we're, the reason that we're on this committee by application and by, and then approved by the board is because, we've committed to like, being spokespeople as much as we can be for our community and being familiar with the plan. So, we all have actually read the master plan as committee members, and we're, making an effort to stay informed. So that's what I would say in response to that question. All right, so let's move on. A2, urban density residential replaced by middle density residential, the new land use category that they have proposed. And I think this is just sort of a vote. This would just be not on any specific parcel. We'll get to that when we get to the next page, but this is just the replacing of urban density residential with middle density. Is that right? I guess we're just sort of talking about the creation of this category at all. Any comments before we vote on that, Tom?
Yeah, as far as middle density residential, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. You're trying to replace a land use category with a housing type. It's incongruous. I mean, it's either it's R3, it's R6. Those are the things that people can understand. So I'm not sure what a density level of middle density residential even is. I would vote to do away with the A2 category and leave what we have in place.
Okay, any other comments?
I'm just looking back at the staff presentation from last time, and it looks like they list a density for this of 6 to 24 units per acre. Is that correct, Rachel? Is that still the proposal?
That's correct.
And how does that compare to low density is 3 to 6, and then high density would be over 24? Is that right?
Currently, urban density is 6 to 34. In Crozet, previously, it was 6 to 12. And so we're trying to do away with Crozet having a different density for that. So this new category would replace that in Crozet, and then hopefully we can apply it elsewhere in the county as we move forward with other master plans.
Okay, thank you. So it's sort of maybe a transition zone between low and really high. Okay, thanks.
Anne?
Did I understand that you just said right now our 2010 master plan is 6 to 12 and it's going to be changed to 6 to 24? Or did I misunderstand?
That's the proposal. That's how
That's the proposal. So that's what we'll be voting on. Brian?
I just have to say, I think anything toward 24 is not middle, that's urban. I know it might not be considered urban in the rest of the county, but for Crozet, that's too dense, given we just don't have the infrastructure to support it. So I just can't support this. And I really like some of the, like the bungalow courts and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But just creating something that's 6 to 24, that's just letting things get out of control.
All right, good. I think that was a clarifying brief discussion. So let's go ahead and vote.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm ask one question. What are the height limitations in that district that you're proposing?
I'm sorry, I couldn't see you, David.
3 stories.
Yeah, you're not getting the 24 anyway.
We don't need it then.
Then we don't need it, I guess.
Unless you want to dig a basement for cars to park in.
Well,
It only works in downtown Charlottesville financially. But
go ahead, Anne.
And was this the zone where the max was going to be a 5,000 square foot building, or was that somewhere else? Because I have trouble keeping them straight.
That's correct.
Charles, sorry,
This one.
this is it.
This one,
Okay.
yes.
So 3 stories and max 5,000 square feet. Okay.
All right, attendees are welcome to vote in the chat, and we'll go ahead and vote as the committee. If you are in support of the urban density residential being replaced by middle density residential in the Crozet master plan, raise your hand now. Valerie, David, Josh. Anybody else? All right, if you are not in support of the urban density being replaced by middle density in the Crozet master plan, raise your hand now.
Hausman's hand is up.
Thank you. And
Day
Brian,
is up.
okay. Everybody else. Thanks. All right, let's keep going. Light industrial replaced by office R&D flex light industrial on 3 Notch Road. This one to me seems pretty straightforward, but I don't want to miss anything. So any comments? Anne?
I would say that the great appeal to this is to be able to encourage more employment places in Crozet, which has certainly been a goal for the longtime residents for decades, that they don't want to have to travel downtown to get a job when we could get our engineers and people out here doing things. So that purple color on the map, which may have a new color now, but it was purple 5 or 8 years ago, was really designed to encourage the Afton Scientifics and the Perrone Robotics and those kinds of folks to be here.
Yeah, so if you're in favor of the A3 light industrial, the expansion of the employment opportunities on 3 Notch Road, raise your hand now or chime in.
I'm in on this one.
Okay.
I'm in on this one.
Anybody opposed?
Okay, unanimous support. Very good.
Unanimous support for A3. All right, G1. This one also I recall being straightforward for me, but publicly accessible park areas. So it's a clarification of making green space. In the 2010, it just says green space, and now we're going to have it in the appropriate places say public park and not just the vague term of green space. Are there any comments on this?
I think that makes sense because in the last plan we had green space that then we get requests to turn it into new development, and when it's a park, it's a park. And let's be straightforward about it.
Yeah, it seems to make sense to me. So if nobody else has clarifications or questions or anything, let's go ahead and vote. If you are in support of the G1 change, raise your hand now.
Yes.
Yes, for Brian too.
Okay, it looks like everybody. All right, thanks. Any opposed that I missed?
I'm on a roll.
All right. G2. So this is the site-specific sort of change. The Brownsville Road, Crozet Avenue, Route 250. It had been green space and neighborhood density residential, and they are proposing to change it to neighborhood density residential low. So I'll go ahead and let, Vivian, can we let Charles and the attendees speak because he is a resident there and wanted to address the committee?
While he's getting squared away, we need to have Rachel clarify exactly what the change means in those terms, because they sound pretty similar, but we want to make sure we understand what it means.
Yeah, we didn't
Or the
talk about
numbers.
too much. It was a couple meetings ago. So I don't know. Charles, do you want to talk first or should we let Rachel clarify?
Well, I'm happy to say what I want to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Charles Diggans. I live and own a property in Shepherd Run in what is known as the master plan as the Brownsville area, located behind northeast corner of 250 and Crozet Avenue. In the summary of land use changes, note G2, the county has arbitrarily made it as part of the Crozet master plan to rezone this small area from its current green space designation in the 2010 plan to neighborhood low density and deemed it developable, quote unquote, in the proposed 2020 plan. It effectively changes the zoning from the current R1 to R2 per acre, and that's per the definition of the county land use table. Those are not my terms. Those of us that live in this area are strongly opposed to this change. We bought our property for its privacy, buffer, and seclusion, and this change would diminish the value of our property, to say nothing of our enjoyment of the trees and streams that are part of these properties. The properties in here range from 3 to 15-acre parcels with steep topography and streams. The people that live in this area do not want additional density development, and we are respectfully requesting current zoning be retained. And I look back to Tom's earlier comments about the categories that the county has come up with and whatever happened to R1 and R2. We've expressed this interest on multiple occasions to county planning staff with no response. And I've talked to Ann about it. And we just hope that the current zoning be retained, or in the absence of that, to to rate this area as R1, not as something that want 2 sites per acre and is quote developable unquote, to invite another Sparrow Hill in here. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Charles. Thanks for coming tonight. Rachel, did you want to take a second to clarify this, this change again?
Sure. Change is one of those changes that's attempting to capture existing conditions and what can be built under current zoning. The current zoning is R1, and the R1 zoning will be retained. This is not a change in zoning. This is a change.
Not true according to your definitions.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
If I look at the Crozet master plan summarized land use table, neighborhood density residential low, existing residential areas density of less than 2 units per acre would be residential density and form 2 units per acre, single family detached accessory dwellings.
Correct. Again, there's a distinction between plan land use and the existing zoning. They're 2 different tools. Zoning is regulatory and land use is a vision. We're applying the low category because that is the lowest density category we have, which recommends about 2 units per acre. Again, trying to capture the development pattern that's there. It's currently shown as all green space, and we've doing that undevelopable property before.
Category in your defined categories, but in 99% of real estate in this country, things are zoned R1, R2, R3. They're not zoned middle density, low density.
Well, it is still going to be zoned the same. It's land use categories don't have those the definitions include the R1, R6, etc. Tom, did you want to?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Diggans. And also, to me, this is part and parcel of the protection of 250, this land. And I think, by changing it, I don't want to give the impression that somehow that the CCAC is approving any higher density than the community and the neighbors want. Well, I think we should just keep with the R1, no change, it's fine.
Thank you. Does anybody else have comments about the G2? Valerie?
Just clarifying, I think Tom just said keep the R1. The R1 zoning will stay. As Rachel said, the proposed change to make it, instead of being designated on the master plan for green space, to designate it for very low residential density, will make the master plan's designation consistent with the R1 zoning.
Let's be clear though, your definition is not R1 zoning. So let's not say something that's not true.
It's because we're talking about 2 different things. We're talking about R1 is the zoning designation, which stays and would not be changed. What we're talking about is the comprehensive plan designation. which
think
would
this-
not, which this proposal would match that.
That's fine. I don't want to take up
Well,
your meeting, but that's consistent.
I think that, like Rachel said, this is a vision. So if we put in our plan a vision of it being R2, even though we aren't changing it to R2, that is speaking for, for what we are encouraging, 10, 20, 50 years away, maybe next month, who knows? So I think it's worth, I think there's both sides to that, Valerie. Anne?
My question really is about if we're changing the comp plan, basically, which is the Crozet Master Plan chapter for the comp plan, that takes away or makes it consistent with the comp plan if someone wants to come in and make it R2.
Right.
So yes, they're separate categories, but it's starting the slippery slope. So I just want people to understand it's step 1 and step 2, and we would be doing step 1 proactively instead of requiring a more substantial effort to get there by first going back and having a comp plan amendment first. If this is, and this is high risk zone here. This is steep slopes and streams and other areas. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of water quality degradation throughout when we've had various failures due to weather and that kind of thing as climate change is happening. So we have a lot of cleanup to do already, and we have to be really thoughtful about where we put construction of any sort.
Thanks, Anne. All right, let's go. I'm going to just try to keep us moving. So let's go ahead and vote. If you are in favor of the proposed change at Brownsville Road from green space and neighborhood density residential to neighborhood density residential low, raise your hand or speak now. All right, I'm actually not voting. So Valerie, David, if you're not in support of this G2 change, vote leave it as is in the 2010 plan. Raise your hand, speak now.
Yep.
Speak now, Brian.
Sandy, is that you too?
Yes.
Okay, and Josh, thanks. All right. G3 is a very similar change, but in a different location. If I recall, I might need Rachel to remind me or to verify. This is the one that's on Mince Springs Road. Is that right? And it's a change from green space to neighborhood density residential low. Is that right, Rachel?
It is in that area. I'm trying to pull up my map to make sure I have the right road, but it's near there. It's on the
Railroad Avenue, Mince Springs Road.
Yes, yes.
It's on the top, that top little corner poking out the green area on the 2010 map. So it's a similar thing where we're changing our vision for that area. And the proposal is to make it neighborhood density residential low as far as the color there. It doesn't actually change the zoning. Again, it's really the same as the last thing we just voted on. It's just in a different part of the map. And I don't know if we have any residents or property owners over there here tonight, but I will, Anne, you want to say?
Question to clarify, in the chart somewhere, I wrote down P3 increase of 23 to 46 units. Is the result of this change is somewhere, maybe it's in the matrix. Oh, I lost it again for this. So, and this is way out on the edge, folks, on the mountainside. So
yeah.
It's not like it's downtown or on 250 or anything else. So if there's more information that's available from staff about what this means, that's different from what it says in the chart, I would sure like to know now.
Costas, did you have a comment?
It was a while ago. I just wanted to say something about when we were talking about the Brownsville thing, but
Yeah.
it's passed and we voted, so.
Sorry,
I'm okay
I'm
with
sorry, I
that.
missed
That-
your hand.
That's okay.
All right, and
I agree.
Rachel,
It should be consistent.
The parcel is 11 acres and I don't know the acreage of the area. I will have to calculate. I can't do it right now, but it looks like it's maybe 2/3 of that would be changed to the neighborhood density low, which again recommends 2 units per acre or less. So I don't think I don't see it being as high as 40, but maybe in the range of 10 to 20 units.
Okay.
I mean, based on my feedback that I've gotten and my own opinion, I don't see why we need to mess with that parcel and do anything to make it sound like we're encouraging development there.
Yeah,
On
I
the
think we
edge.
need to keep the development closer to downtown.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on G3, the change from green space to density low. G3 on the land use changes. And if you're in support of that change, raise your hand now. Anybody?
Can I ask one clarification? What
Yeah, go ahead.
Rachel, excuse me for interrupting everyone. Rachel, could you repeat what your thinking was? I guess I missed this before. What the rationale was to propose the change, and would it change to low density? Is that right?
I don't know if you have a map in front of you, but the line kind of cuts through the property along where the critical
What
slope.
do you see?
Right now, it's all green space. And
I
again,
see.
something that unless we're recommending the area be a park or it's entirely constrained by critical resources, we're trying to make sure that all property have developability in the master plan and it's not entirely green space.
Okay, I see it now on your map where the G3 is. Thank you. Sorry, I was missing that earlier. Okay.
I'm just curious with that in mind, Rachel, why didn't you just change the entire thing to the yellow? I mean, if it's not going to be a park or whatever.
The line follows critical slopes.
Okay.
So that we keep the slopes and the stream buffers and critical resources like that are green space on the map. So, because they're recommended for protection.
Okay.
I have a question about that.
Go
Real
ahead,
quick. Rachel, so that means when you do the calculation, it's only the usable areas that are not, if it's 2 units per acre, it's only the usable areas regardless of the parcel line.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it's only the buildable areas that the county doesn't exclude for critical slopes or buffers, stream buffers or whatever.
When we're calculating density through a legislative process like a rezoning or a special use permit, that's how we calculate it, based on the buildable area outside of the critical resources.
So how is that different than the view where they counted all kinds of stuff that was unbuildable in the calculation?
Yeah, this sounds like ripe for that kind of loophole.
So that was under our zoning ordinance, it was not a legislative review process. It was by right through the zoning ordinance. That's how we calculate density.
Okay, so they got bonus density because of their zoning, or it wasn't bonus, it was just a concentrated density on.
Yeah, it's a large parcel and the majority of the parcel was constrained in stream buffer. But since it was such a large parcel, their buildable area was pretty small. So it concentrated.
So how is that different than G3? If it's an 11-acre parcel, how would we avoid it being an apartment building because of critical slopes being half of the parcel?
Well, they would have to go through a rezoning process to request densities that would allow for an apartment building. And then we would look at what the comp plan recommends, and the low category recommends a density of 2 units or less per acre, and it does not recommend.
Yeah, so I think the point here is it's not that parcel may be 11 acres, but we're only talking about changing, what did you say, Rachel, some percentage of that?
I would say like 2/3 maybe.
So
Give-
7 acres, let's just say. So that's the point is we're saying if you want to come in and change the zoning from what it is now to meet the comp plan says it's only 7 of this 11 acres. The calculation would only apply to the 7 acres, not to the whole 11 acres, correct? Which, I mean, this is the difference between a by right and then coming in for a rezoning. Y'all can get mad about the view all you want, but that's different.
Yeah.
That's apples and oranges compared to this.
No, I think it's a good, I mean, yeah, I
Yep,
appreciate
I understand the difference. Thanks.
And can I ask
I
another
don't think
question?
everybody does understand the difference, but I just wanted to make it clear.
Well, I think there's still people who will vote no on G3 because they just don't want the map to reflect any more vision of,
That's
of
fine,
development.
but vote for that reason, not
Yeah.
because you're misinformed.
Right. Well, and I appreciate the clarification. So I think it was a worthwhile discussion, and but again, we're just going to vote on for the staff and decision makers clarification of at least this committee's opinion. If you are in support of the change in G3 from green space to neighborhood density residential low, raise your hand now. Josh, Valerie, David, Joe.
If I can add a reason, because if we just change G1 now means that anything that's green is going to be a public park. I don't believe this area is intended to be a public park. So it just doesn't seem fair to.
Is that true, Rachel? We're not changing all green space to public parks. It was just adding a more specific category of green space. I thought where it would actually be. It's not that all green space is changing to public park, right?
That's correct. There's 2 different green space categories. One is the critical resources and the other is public park.
So this would be critical resources in the.
But I thought you said there weren't any critical resources here, Rachel, not in the areas that you're proposing to change to low density residential.
That's on staff's recommendation. So if there's the committee wants this to all be green space, we would designate it as the other green space, the non-public park one. And
But just for clarification, the area you're proposing to change to the very pale yellow, the lowest density, that area does not have any critical resources in it.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to clarify that was my reason for supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, and then all opposed to the proposed G3 change, raise your hand now.
Yep. Sandy here.
My hand too.
All right, so I don't see anybody abstaining from that one. So, okay. Mixed use center designations. There's a few changes that might take more time, but a lot of this is, these changes I think are sort of clarifying getting a little more specific about something, some of the center, the town centers. So the first one is that downtown Crozet, which was in the 2010 plan, just designated downtown. It now be called downtown and town center and public park because it is going to include the plaza, and the town center is to make it the primary center in Crozet because we have these other secondary centers listed below. So to me, this seems pretty good and a strong change in support of the guiding visions of the master plan. So does anybody have any questions or comments? I see Doug's hand up. I might have missed you earlier.
No, that was on this point.
Yeah.
It's just that I think this change that moves a designation to include the plaza is all part of the infrastructure that we've been looking for. And it came from a public-private partnership, in essence, So I think it should be something we strongly support.
Yes, so if you are in support of the M1 change for downtown, raise your hand now.
Yes.
Is that everybody? Any opposed? No. Okay, unanimous. Thank you for that change. All right, Old Trail. It is previously designated mixed use, and the proposed change is to make it community mixed use plus village center. The village center designation indicates that Old Trail is a distinct but secondary center in Crozet, and the community mixed use designation improves alignment with other master plans and reflects the pedestrian oriented scale and design of Old Trail Village Center. Any questions or comments about that? Tom?
Yeah, when originally Old Trail was approved, we were told, and I don't know if this aligns with this verbiage, but that was going to be their second commercial space across the street. And so are we changing that? So that's not allowed, and all of a sudden we're going to end up with another summit there with 195 apartments on that side too.
I was also not totally clear. We talked about this a little bit last time, and we had the developer speak to. I was not clear on on the way it seems to get bigger, closer to the golf course, this change. So I'm a little bit unclear on this one. Jenny or Ann or Rachel, did you have comments, clarifications?
I agree with you. I still am kind of unclear, as it appears that the ability for the mixed use has grown. And my understanding was that it was important to the community at the time that it stay in that location where there already is some land that's undeveloped that can have that mixed use. And so I've heard some explanations, but I still don't quite understand why the brown color seems to have grown. Somehow I'm to believe it hasn't actually allowed for more, and I still I don't understand.
I mean, I don't know how much time to spend on this because we did talk about it last time, and it's basically went from the pink and orange to all brown. But it seems to me that with that change, you allow for more mixed use parcels in Old Trail. So I'm inclined to not support this change, even though I don't have a problem with Old Trail being designated a secondary village center. It's more where the brown is drawn seems to leave a little bit. We're going from a very specific and from what I've heard, when Old Trail was being drawn in the previous master plans, there was a lot of thought that went into where the pink and the orange lines are. And so now for them to all turn brown seems like we're losing some guiding principles in the map, and we're leaving, we're going from clear to cloudy. So that's where I stand.
We contacted the board of directors at Old Trail to see what their view of this is.
I mean, we might have some attendees that live in Old Trail or committee members. I don't know. But I mean, we did hear from the developer last time, and he was obviously in support of it, as well as his representatives. But
I was just going to point out that the Summit project is both in orange and in pink if you look at the old map already. So it doesn't look like, the reason for changing it to brown shouldn't be that we're afraid of another Summit type project. I mean, obviously that developer has been developing the whole project, and clearly he's got a continued vision for that area. It seems like it was a logical thing to do.
I think my concern isn't with housing, it's more with commercial development, because I really want to limit commercial development. I mean, I like what's there and I like the plan for it to be across this, in that across the street plan, but to go all the way back to Adel Hill with potential commercial development worries me, because I want commercial development to be downtown.
I think we need further clarification, either from Bill or from the county.
I think we asked for it last meeting.
I think in the chat, there's a question asking for clarification, and in the Q&A, there's an Old Trail resident asking, well, they're asking, I don't know if they're asking Valerie as an attorney or Valerie as a CCAC member, or maybe the county could answer that. There's a question there too.
Well, if this change will alter the build out requirement for resident changeover for management of the HOA, if the total potential build out is ever higher. Valerie, do you know?
Well, it can, first of all, make clarification. The intention with this was for the master plan designation to be consistent with the zoning that's been in place in Old Trail since 2005. And it was amended in, I think it was 2015. It would not increase the overall number of dwelling units that are permitted there. The original zoning allowed for 2,200 units with a minimum number of units of, shoot, I'm going to blank on the specifics. I think it was 1,600. You had to have at least 1,600 and no more than 2,200. The developer realized that that plan would have required probably 5 summit apartment, and that wasn't appropriate or necessary or desired by anyone, and was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to achieve the minimum that the original zoning required of 1,600 units. So among other things, when we amended the zoning in 2015 or whenever it was, we reduced the minimum to 1,000, which the developer thinks is fairly realistic based on the current pace. But in looking at it, the zoning plans that are in place allow for commercial development throughout Old Trail, not just residential in some of those areas, including over to Adel Hill and others. There's different levels of intensity of commercial or non-residential development that are allowed, but each of those blocks allows some types of non-residential. And so the request was to, since it's zoned, the entire neighborhood is zoned as a mixed use neighborhood, that the master plan reflect that. It wouldn't change the zoning, it would support the zoning and be consistent with it. So that was the intention behind the request. I don't want to speak for the staff about what their rationale was there. Let me make sure I answer this question. Will it change or alter the build out requirement for the residential changeover? No, it wouldn't. I don't think it would have any impact on the amount of residential units, because that's already locked in place with the zoning. I hope that helps. I'm happy to try and answer more questions. And
anonymous attendee, did that answer your question about the HOA management for Old Trail, and if this would affect that? I guess chat again if you're satisfied. Any other comments? Should we go ahead and vote on this one?
I guess I just want to be clear, sort of following up on Valerie. I guess the overall sentiment here is this is one of those changes to kind of reflect so that the master plan reflects what the reality is on the ground in terms of the zoning, like Valerie's saying, rather than this patchwork of purple, pink, and orange and all this and these tiny little dots. The fact that it already is all it's already a mishmash of orange and pink already, and we're just turning it brown to reflect, rather than having like this patchwork, this quilt of pink and orange. We just say it's all brown now, because that's what it really is. I guess is kind of what we're saying.
I think that's a very succinct way of expressing it. Thank you, Joe.
Well, I appreciate that you think that was succinct.
Well, it was It was.
It was color, a colorful metaphor.
It was.
So if this is all about vision, what is the vision? In other words, if we make this change, what goes in there? What is this? What are the developers thinking they want to do with that parcel? Anybody know?
Well, there is, again, zoning in place that dictates and governs that. There's a very detailed code of development that on a block by block basis specifies what uses are allowed in each of the blocks and what density limits, minimum and maximum numbers of units that are permitted in each block and types of uses in each block and setbacks in each block. So it's very, very specific. And the idea is that the developer didn't want the master plan to be more restrictive than the zoning is, which is already in place and has been in place since '05. And again, it's because it's this patchwork of various uses in different blocks that it's already a mixed use neighborhood, and that the mixed use designation would more accurately reflect that. So the zoning would control what uses go where.
There's a question, Lillian, is another summit allowed in what you are saying, Valerie?
It would depend on the block. And I can try to pull up the code of development for the neighborhood, but certain blocks do allow apartments and certain ones don't. Certain blocks allow more density limits than other blocks. Generally speaking, closer to Old Trail Drive and like the existing village center, more density is allowed there than on, as you go out. But it really depends on which block you're talking about. But again, the original zoning permits up to 2,200 units total. And to get there, it would necessitate more apartments, but I don't believe there are any plans for any more apartment complexes, but certainly the zoning does allow for it. That was the whole point of Old Trail originally, was to have high density mixed use in that location.
Ally, are you happy with the answer that you got about whether you could build a lot more commercial from, Old Trail Drive all the way back?
I don't think I'm gonna get that answer. I was especially leery of this change when I heard staff say that the developer had asked to put in a pavilion there, and that was why they were asking for this change. So for me, that sounded like the developer intended to add a development that was in competition with a development of that type downtown. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. That's why I am not sure about this change, although I appreciate Joe's summary of it as just,
We table this one till we get more information.
Yeah, I was actually to abstain from voting on this. So, what do you think, Rachel? Were you gonna?
I was just gonna, if it would be helpful, I could summarize again what's allowed in block 26. I think that's the one that people are most concerned with, but I'm not sure if it's all of the Brown area or just that one on the kind of west side.
That's what I'm concerned about. Yeah.
So that's block 26, allows up to 120 or 150 residential units. It does allow apartments and multifamily, non-residential uses. There's a wide variety, commercial retail uses allowed, institutional uses, community center are a couple. There is a max square footage though of non-residential, 25,000 square feet was the max for office, and looks like 20,000 for non-office, like commercial retail.
Okay. So changing it to Brown won't change that, or will change that?
No, that's what's allowed by the zoning. So that's what's approved today. And the change to Brown was just trying to be.
Well, I know it won't change because there's a difference between zoning and, but the vision for Brown, is that the same as what you just described, or is it more, the vision for Brown?
It could potentially allow more.
Yeah.
Brown allows it would probably allow for a little more density than that and a little more non-residential, but it was the closest category we had that we felt like
Right.
matched those approved uses.
Okay. You
I
guys,
would expect that the homeowners, residents in the area will have a lot to say as this goes forward.
yeah,
Whatever the use, whether it's an amphitheater or something else.
yeah. I just,
Because
we
it's
are,
so far into the
we're,
neighborhood.
like we've said, this whole meeting, we're talking about our vision for that land in the future land use of that, in my, particularly that block. And my vision for it not to be, denser or commercial more than it already is designated. So I wouldn't want someone to come to the board and then say, oh, but it's brown on the land use map, and that would be in, our proposal for a big commercial, another commercial building is in compliance with that. Any other comments? All right, should we vote on this one? Yeah? All right, if you're in support of change M3, or sorry, M2, the Old Trail Village mixed use to community mixed use and village center, raise your hand now. David, Josh, Valerie. All right, if you would vote to keep that as the mixed use, raise your hand now.
Me too.
Any abstaining?
Yep, I'm going to abstain on this one because I think, frankly, this is a decision that should be left to the people who live in Old Trail. I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Okay. Right, so similar change. This one is Clover Lawn. Same change, but from mixed use to commercial center, commercial mixed use and village center. So I'll go ahead and read this. It's a distinct secondary center in Crozet, which I think we can agree it is. And the commercial mixed use designation improves alignment with other master plans. Does anybody have comments on this, the Clover Lawn change? I don't think that this one, it's a little different than Old Trail because it didn't really change the pink in the 2010 is the same shape in the 2020. So it's not, it doesn't have the same complication.
Allie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think Mike Kunkel is gotten put into attendees.
Oh.
So
yeah.
I've been kicked out of this meeting 4 times while I've been trying to listen. Maybe that's just some glitch on my end, but it's been really hard to
Mike
follow.
And
then I'm looking in the participants and Mike had his hand raised. So he's somehow left us as a.
Thanks, Vivian. Can we get Mike back in?
Overall, built out, isn't it? I mean, name only.
Yeah, it's not, I don't see that. This is just more of a clarification and making it in alignment with, the current, how the other master plans describe this type of area. It's not actually changing any different parcels. Do we have Mike back? And I'll just say again, if you're an attendee, you're welcome to vote in the chat. Go ahead and spell out what you're voting on any of these things. Mike, did you have a vote on the Old Trail change?
I don't know how long it's been since I've voted and you've seen that. So I've raised my hand for the votes.
Okay,
so
I haven't.
I don't know where, when you said unanimous and I got kicked out and I couldn't tell, I couldn't even control mute.
Oh, that was downtown, the downtown, everybody voted that they approved that change, M1. Did you agree, Mike? I don't want to say it was unanimous if you don't.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, and M2, that one, we had 3 votes for improving the change of Old Trail. And where did you stand on that one?
You said there was 3 that approved. I mean, I don't approve. I guess that's the
Okay.
other, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Got it. Is
Thanks.
that it?
Yep.
Is that all I missed?
What else did you miss? I think that was it.
I think it's it. Thanks.
Okay, so Clover Lawn, let's go ahead and vote on this one. If you approve of the change from mixed use to commercial mixed use in Village Center, raise your hand.
Yep.
I'm good with it.
All right, I think that was everybody. Any opposed to that change? Okay, no. Wickham Pond M4, the proposed change is from urban density residential to middle density residential and neighborhood center. The neighborhood center designation was added to reflect the small scale approved commercial area and emphasize the importance of connecting this area to downtown and other activity centers within Crozet. So this one's a little more complicated because it includes the middle density residential that we already voted on. And it also, you know, doesn't already have commercial development on it, like the other, like Old Trail and Clover. And I guess I just add to the M2 vote, my personal feedback is I don't have a problem with it being designated village center. It's more it's just that sticky area with the community mixed use, just for your notes, Rachel. So anyway, with this Wickham Pond area, any comments on this change? Tom?
Let's say from the last couple of master plans, I hope we're talking about the same area, which is the area right across from Martha Jefferson Centura Clinic on the opposite side of the street. That small area in there, is that what we're talking about?
Oh yeah, so there is that, I misspoke, yeah, there's that commercial development.
Right, now that in the last master plans was to remain a commercial center.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't housing, it was commercial.
Looking at M4. Rachel, do you want to help me out there?
Is this the unbuilt portion of Wickham Palm, that
Yes.
parcel kind of right next to 240?
It's to the east of Whitegate, not west.
It was previously green space and urban density residential. And I believe the 2010 master plan talked about centers in the narrative. It wasn't on the map. So that's the kind of a change we're doing with this update, putting them on the map.
However, there were lots of centers that were removed in 2010, and that's probably why it wasn't on the map, is because it was one of the dozen or more that were taken away to try to bring down all of these little super high density pockets that were popping up all over the place that put us up at 20,000 people. So,
Do people need clarification on this?
Yeah, I think we do.
Would Rachel be able to put a map up share her screen and show us where? And
I mean, it took me a while to find it, and it's, you know, I can't really show you on my little printout. So yeah, if she is, it's so hard to see when it's this small, but the orange on the old map gets bigger on the new map, and expands to the west all the way to Park Drive. Whereas before there was some more green. Yeah.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, thank you, Rachel.
So this is a 2020 map. The N is the neighborhood center. You can see the orange is the middle density category that staff's recommending. So it is right near Wickham Pond. Wickham Pond did have some approved commercial uses there, but not yet built.
Okay, so I was right about that. There isn't commercial development there yet. It's just been approved.
Yeah, and this is 2010 map. So
So the part that Tom was talking about is actually west of that, where
over here.
So
White
that's
Gate.
not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Way over here, yeah.
Yeah. So we would be creating this on the map anyway, as another center.
One of the problems with this is essentially you have to deal with this and the White Gate and as a combination, because what you're talking about is compounding all the growth. So I'm not for this middle density housing in this area. I think if I'd rather my druthers, these should be treated similar to what Sparrow Hill was treated to. They're on the edge of the development area. Master plan calls for it to have decreasing density towards the edge. So I would, again, my view would be is to treat it as allowed up to R3, which is what we had for Sparrow Hill on the south side of town, on 250.
Just to clarify, this is not this is not White Gate. This is east of the White Gate property, right? There's some conversation in the chat about where, again, we're talking about.
So the center designation has a 1/4 mile kind of radius watershed, we call it, because that's how far you would from the center.
So it does sort of, I see the ring kind of goes into White Gate on the left.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
And the map is contiguous orange all the way over the northern part of White Gate. If that's so.
No, the orange stops at Park Drive.
Not in the new one. Oh, no, the part way before, it's way east of Park Drive. That's
the old one, it's way east of Park Drive. The new one has it all the way up to Park Drive. Am I right, Rachel?
I'm just, wherever the map went that Rachel had up a minute ago was different. Okay.
I showed two maps. I showed the 2010 map, which had White Gate Farm as green space, and then the 2020 map has White Gate Farm as a split between middle density and neighborhood density.
Right.
I emailed this map with my email today.
Yeah. No, I got it. Yeah.
All right. So should we go ahead and vote? It's already 8:30. So
I think there's a serious question here. On the one hand, it expands the potential commercial development area, but if I understood Rachel, it actually reduces takes it from urban density to middle density. And so the question is, given the lack of infrastructure in that area and the rest of Crozet, which way are we better off? And I think it's a cosmic quarter flip, as I understand it.
Except that I believe we heard earlier that the middle density residential actually is a higher density than what's currently allowed in Crozet under the urban. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point, Joe, that the middle density would go to 24, whereas now we have the 12. The other thing is that I lost the chat. There was some comments here that I wanted to bring forward. Meg Holden, she says, do we need commercial development before we've built downtown? And I sort of agree. I don't really want to call this encourage commercial development somewhere that's not downtown. So I think there's that. It's hard for me to keep up with the chat. So if you guys see comments that need to be vocalized, let me know. Let's go ahead and vote. If you are in favor of...
Holly, what was it in 2010, this area?
It was the urban density residential. So that's, like Joe just clarified, in Crozet was the 6 to 12
Well, if we treated it like Sparrow Hill, it would come down to R3 or 3 homes per acre, which is what we got out of.
Yeah, which is different, like,
reason.
that would be an alternative change to what the staff's proposing here. Jenny?
Then my vote would be to reject, just simply reject what's there now, and then deal with it when we have to deal with it the same way we dealt with Sparrow Hill when it went to the Board of Supervisors and asked for the lowest possible density on the rezoning. The owner gets a rezoning, but he gets it at the lowest density.
Jenny, did you have something?
I just wanted to add that in the chats, I see that Cliff Fox has pointed out that part of the property in question is zoned LI, and then also feels that people need to pay attention to the maps, and also feels that the matter and issues are understudied. Why produce an opinion without sufficient information? And so I guess I'm not a CCAC member, but to that I would say that this is the group's opportunity with the information that the county's given. We've been told that we're moving past land use. They're going to move forward. Land use is closed for CCAC, and I don't know how long that information will be allowed for the public to give input on this particular chapter. But to Cliff's point, I think I would like more information, but I think the group is being put in a position, and this is an extra meeting that was requested so that feedback could be given. So
Yeah, and we've listened to a lot of staff reports about these proposed changes, and and we want to, if we don't understand, we're not going to support a change.
Right. And there will be a public hearing process, but this is supposed to be the part where that's another thing in the chat, that there will be a public hearing process. Yes, we understand that, but this is the part where the community is supposed to help shape the plan. And so based on the information that the community has and the volunteers that are giving their time to CCACs, I think people are doing the best they can to try to represent the community, and this group is supposed to oversee the implementation of the master plan. So that would be my answer to some of what I see in the chat.
Thanks, Jenny. Any other comments? I think I'm ready to vote on this one. If you're in favor of the change at in the Wickham Pond area M4 from urban density residential to middle density and neighborhood center, raise your hand now. David and Valerie. And Joe.
It may be that,
Sorry.
Oh, you're just counting.
Counting one,
Okay.
two.
it
Okay.
may be that some people would be okay with it if the middle density category didn't exist, that if it were still just 6 to 12, I don't know. But the
That's
zoning.
true. I mean, personally, because I'll just finish the vote. If you're not in support of the change, raise your hand now.
Add me.
And Sandy?
I'm confused.
So I'll say Sandy abstained, but
right.
For me, I'm also opposed to the N on the map. So for me, yeah, I would be, so I guess just to say, Valerie, yeah, I don't like middle density there, but I also don't like it being classified neighborhood. I understand that there's already approved commercial use there, but I would be opposed to encouraging it as a center in competition with downtown or even Old Trail.
What is neighborhood density? 3 to 6, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's intended to be competition. I think it's supposed to be a small scale neighborhood center to support all of the residents in the neighborhoods immediately around it, like Wickham Pond and the Highlands and even Western Ridge behind it.
Yeah, we're not that big of a community, and we have enough trouble encouraging commercial as it is, in my opinion. So I would want to focus it at least.
I think the other point that staff was trying to get at is if you don't make this connection over there to Ridge or to Park Ridge, I think it's called, you're going to force people who might use that commercial to get on 240 when they could use a parallel road that connects across both of those properties. I mean, you know, there's
Is
other
that
reasons.
true, Rachel and Charles? Is that part of your thought there?
My main thought was thinking about getting people out of their cars. So to that point, I guess, yes. Concentrating small pockets of commercial and a little bit higher density of housing together can help us serve the area with transit too. So that people don't have to get in their car for every trip they take in Crozet.
Yeah, I would love to see that multi-use path from Highlands to downtown to encourage people out of their cars. All right, I think we can move on. There's one more on this, M5. The west side of Carter Street, intersection of Crozet Avenue and Route 250. So that's a few places, changing from mixed use to neighborhood mixed use. It also improves alignment with other master plans, reflects the desired smaller scale of commercial development, provides a transition from downtown to residential areas, that's on Carter Street, and encourages low intensity commercial uses with current highway commercial zoning at the intersection of Crozet Ave and Route 250. So this is a few places on the map. If I'm right about this, this is the Gateway Market, which is now the Latin to the taco place, and Carter Street downtown. And is that it, Rachel? Maybe it was just those two.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right. Any comments on that change? Anne?
Question, Gateway, of course, has a big rezoning in place that already allows a lot more building than what is there now. So what does this designation cause to happen? And then also the same question for Carter Street. If we're talking about Jarman's Gap Corner, there's a steep slope on one side and the antique store on the other. So what is this change going to result in as far as change of use or size of buildings, et cetera?
It's just an updated land use category. As we update our master plans, we're phasing out this mixed use category and providing different types of mixed use. So this is neighborhood mixed use. It's a smaller scale.
So again, it's the way I look at it, it's like the Clover Lawn change. It's really just an updating of terminology. It's not changing the size or vision for any property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you're in support of the M5 change, raise your hand now.
Yep.
Okay. Brian?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Last page. Do we have a few more minutes, you guys? So Whitegate is P1. This is a big one, and we'll probably be able to talk about this more. But for now, we're just talking about the proposed land use change to the map, which is to change it from green space to middle density residential and neighborhood density residential. So I'll read the paragraph again. This split land use designation aims to continue the pattern of development currently in Wickham Pond. Changing this property's designation would support broader housing choice within Crozet and infill development that connects the Park Ridge Drive corridor to Crozet's easternmost neighborhoods. An increase of 49 to 143 additional units over the 2010 plan could be developed under the revised designation. Any comments on this one? Well, we've already voted about middle density, but Joe, did you have, did you raise your hand?
Sorry, I dropped off for a second. Are we on Whitegate?
Yes, P1.
Okay, so I do support Whitegate. Sort of the idea here of making it consistent with what's going on at Wickham. I do think that given hopefully what goes on with that light industrial, some of those hopefully development centers along the employment centers along 240 right there, having a little bit more density in this area will allow a little bit more pedestrian friendly people to be able to walk to work or whatever without putting a lot of extra strain on commuting. So I do support this in this one particular location, given its proximity, especially to those future employment centers there along 240.
Isn't there another, maybe Rachel can answer this, isn't there another development proposal along 240 also, which is backed by the veterinarian office? So we have two developments. I mean, that's what I was talking about before, is that, we have to talk about the cumulative effect of the development of these two at a higher density. So it seems to me we have an elementary school that's already overcrowded. It's supposed to be expanded to take some of the burden off of Brownsville, and we're loading it up more than it's overcrowding. Not to mention, again, as I went back to, these are on the edge of the growth area. They should be at a lower density. Treat them like Sparrow Hill.
There's a question in the Q&A. Rachel, are you able to show the map again where we're talking about?
E1.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
So I'll zoom in a little bit. Whitegate Farm is this property here. And we're proposing the orange, which is the middle density on the front. And then the back part is the yellow, which is neighborhood density. Referring to this parcel up here, which is near A2. We have an active rezoning under review for this property. But here's the Whitegate Village property.
I will say personally, I am not going to support the staff recommendation here because I think that's just too much density. So I would, I support it changing from green space. So I would propose that we vote twice like we did last time, just to clarify whether you support the change as written. And then if I have other people who are interested in a second vote, I would put forth a second vote that would be changing it from green space to neighborhood density low, or something like that.
Okay.
Is any more conversation?
I just want to say that to kind of address Tom's point, and of course, I think we all recognize that like population and the effects on infrastructure are critical. But as Rachel and so many people have pointed out, this is a long-term document, right? We're looking 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So for example, Tom, I mean, they just had, the advisory committee on capital investment just had their meeting. It sounded very promising that Crozet expansion is going to get funded. So if Crozet Elementary gets expanded in 3 years and we have adequate, or increased school capacity, then the question becomes, what happens to this extra land, right? I mean, we don't get to reclaim that land once a Sparrow Hill, once, R3 gets built there and big $650,000 homes go up on that property. You don't get to claw that back and put up smaller townhomes, smaller places where people can live and afford. And so, once the Licking Hole Creek bridge gets built, it's going to support a lot more. And I know who knows when that's coming in, but I think we got to look a little further down the road than some of these shorter term infrastructure challenges, which are real and absolutely they are. But there's not that much land, left to use here. And I think that's why this Whitegate is one of these places where we can add a little bit of density, because there's not many other places we can do it, or otherwise all we're going to end up with is $650,000 homes.
Well, my response, Joe, would be one is, I've been here 30 years. I would go back to the original master plan, and I go back to the original promise from the county of what we were supposed to expand to, and it was 12,000. We're going to be over 12,000 at 16,000. You know what I mean? So what you're saying is, you know, like I said, I put a little note out. Look at Crozet as an island. Well, the island's damn near full. You know, and if you, like I said, I think the compromise position is to go to a neighborhood density, go to an R3. So there you're not getting $600,000 homes. That's not what they were over at Sparrow Hill. You know, you say you're not getting that, but you're not putting any extra pressure. You're talking, and again, you can't talk about this development in its as a singular development when there's another one down the street waiting to come in with several more hundred homes. You know, and the other, well, I don't know how many more homeless, but more homes. And the bottom line is that you say long range. Well, how long do you think it's going to take for these homes to fill in the way we've been growing? So yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I also understand what the original intent of our master plan was. You know, it's like I hear from people say that, oh, you don't want any more growth in Crozet. You don't, you know, you're a NIMBY. Well, you know, I think it was Sean who gave the thing that said in the last decade, 30% of the growth in the county has been in Crozet. So I don't think we have to worry about being called NIMBYs with all the growth we've had. You know, I just think that, you know, this community had an agreement. It has met its agreement, and, you know, and that's where we're at.
Thanks. I think those were both good comments. And I also think, I just wanted to add that, you know, smaller units in Crozet don't tend to be affordable by default anyway. So I don't know if that's would meet that goal in the end either. And I saw you. And I see Sandy's hand up and Costas has had his hand up. I don't know. I just don't want to be ignoring those if those are people waiting to talk.
Yeah, Anne might want to chime into what I have to say, which is that I don't think we
I'm
can,
all right.
at this point, overly optimistic about what the financial standing of the state and the county will be in the years to come. We're in a pretty precarious place right now financially, and what I'm hearing from state legislators is they are not particularly hopeful about lots of extra revenue coming in. So I think we should be conservative in looking at the master plan. And, you know, if happy days are here again and there's lots of money around and we have expanded our school, then there's nothing to stop the county from rezoning some of these areas, even if the master plan, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think the master plan necessarily prohibits future growth. And frankly, I mean, master plans can be changed, but I would prefer to be conservative. And I like the resolution that Ally has sent us, suggesting that until we get the infrastructure we need, we should go with the minimums all around.
All right, are we ready to vote on P1? If you are in support of the change as written by the staff here, from green space to middle density and neighborhood density residential, raise your hand now. Josh, David, Valerie, Joe?
Welcome to the dark side, Joe.
He's a swing vote. All right, all opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Everybody else? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do what I said I wanted to do, which is just for staff's clarification. If you would support a change from green space to neighborhood density low, instead, raise your hand now. Or I guess, yeah.
We'd be in favor of both.
Yeah, you could vote yes again. You would also approve, be in support of green space to neighborhood density low and the as written one. Anybody opposed to the change from green space to neighborhood density low idea? John? Anybody else?
John was a no on that.
Yeah, John was a no on.
Okay.
He likes
Yeah.
the green space.
Got it.
Okay, P2, parcels east of Eastern Ave, south of West Hall Drive, north of Licking Hole Creek. They are currently residential, neighborhood density residential green space, changing them to neighborhood density residential parks and green system. I'm losing steam and I don't know exactly what this one is. Does anybody have a brief, a succinct summary of this P2 change? Want to help me out?
I can show the map if that's helpful.
The map would probably be helpful. I see it in one spot, but. Oh, right. Okay, this is in West Hall. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
A portion of West Hall.
I did get messages from some residents there that live on Jana Street, and they were unhappy with that change. I don't know if any of them are at this meeting, but I did get feedback from the residents there, but they might, I think it's literally their backyard going from green space to yellow, but
this is 2010. So the yellow is expanded. And then there is a public trail showing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you've just kind of drawn where the trail is more specifically, and the yellow is a little different shape.
Correct.
And the orange is gone.
Orange is gone.
All right. Does anybody have comments or questions about this change?
I have a question about the map from before.
Mhm.
Had the green space kind of going up into a couple of the lots.
Yeah.
Typically in the past, that's meant that it's some type of environmental feature.
Mhm.
What's the case there?
I guess our mapping has just gotten a little more accurate from 2010 to today.
Can you show the 2020 again now? Yeah, so it's.
So I'll speak to that a little bit just from our own experience in other parts of the county. Yeah, the initial GIS data that was acquired probably 20 years ago, and then has been slowly gotten updated with better information. There's definitely large areas, maybe not everywhere, but in some spots, especially where topography was steep, where there was a lot of foliage and coverage, especially evergreens, where you just couldn't get the information from a satellite or a flyover. So I'm not surprised by this. I see actually there's a couple other things that changed as well as I look between the two maps.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure you have the most up-to-date, most accurate critical slopes and streams and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the 2020 proposed map follows the most accurate data, most recent data we have.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. If you're in support of the change from in P2 that we just looked at on the map, raise your hand now. In support, yes. Any opposed? John.
Ask a question. What impact, if any, Rachel or anybody else, would that have on efforts to try to get the bridge over Licking Hole Creek? Would this make that harder or easier? This change?
I don't see it changing it significantly. I mean, maybe that property is more likely to develop if they need the rezoning. And then that could get a portion of the roadway built through that development.
No.
I'm not sure. I
think the more people that want to use that road, the more likely it is to get built. which goes back to some arguments I've made often about infrastructure, which I'll save for later.
I'm here ready to use that road, so build it.
Same.
All right. Last one. Ann, were you raising your hand?
We can come back another time. That's fine. I don't want, the original developer at Westlake pulled the lots and everything away from the stream buffers and agreed not to cut down all the trees. And so I'm very concerned when I see changes made to the buffers and the floodplain down there, to want to make sure that we're not just taking something off a satellite, but we're actually ground truthing what's going on. And I know that for the bridge, we've spent the last 6 months doing the pre-engineering and tromping around in the woods out there trying to find out exactly where the bridge can go. So there is progress being made on that. And this should not interfere with that happening, in response to somebody's question just a few minutes ago. This is 20 more houses being crammed in there somehow. And I don't know how that's happening when all those houses were pulled up to the high ground in order to get them off the slopes in the original rezoning that was done several years ago. So
Well,
I don't need an answer for that. I'm just concerned.
I saw it as it had, like, I mean, just the first sentence was that the development in that area has occurred at a lower density than in the 2010 plan. So it didn't seem like a problematic change to me as far as vision. But I agree. I don't want. I'm giving the staff benefit of the doubt there that they are, being accurate with the stream protections.
Truth
Okay.
of the matter is, it's the engineering department, when you come forward with site plans, that holds our feet to the fire. I mean, and they're not letting us get away with anything. I mean, but also we do routinely always resurvey every piece of property, because you've got to have the most accurate information, and you just can't get that off of a GIS map. So don't worry, Ann. Frank's on it.
All right, last one, P3. Where's this one, Rachel? I found it.
Sorry, I had a different screen open.
Another green space to parks and green space change. The green space boundary was changed to reflect the actual location of environmental features. So again, an update in mapping. However, this one includes an increase of 23 to 46 additional units over the 2010 plan under the revised designation. But yeah, if you can share that map again, that might be helpful.
So this is the one that we've heard, I believe Supervisor Malik pointed this out, and maybe some others, that this might be under conservation easement, or the property owner is pursuing a conservation easement.
That's what I heard, yeah.
So if that's the case, we'll change that back to green, but I need to follow up on that.
Okay.
And do you have a comment?
It's been in process for the last couple of years. I know they had to get a density, go through the site plan process before the property was sold, in order for a better value to be established for the easement process. And I keep asking every few months of the owners what's going on, and they say it's guaranteed to happen. We're working on it. So there are just a lot of technicalities, I guess, about the tax credits, et cetera, that are taking a long time. But I will definitely verify this right now, because we don't want to cloud the map with confusion. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if we need to vote on this one. It sounds like that this is a very specific, what do you guys think?
I think that if it's on our map as that, it only leads to an increase in value, which is what that guy is going after.
Right.
you know, because I mean,
That's why, yeah, what
that's the
you get
key.
benefit out of
Now,
it.
there is the risk that he goes, oh, it's too valuable, I'm going to sell it, but
Not going to happen.
I don't, yeah, right. I mean, anything we can do to increase the value as is or value right or whatever only gives that person a better
Tax credit.
yeah, to do the deed, to actually put an easement on it. I mean, that's the whole
Yeah.
point of these tax credits, is to entice people to do it.
Yeah, I doubt that this land use designation is really going to change his final price, but you know.
They've already worked through all that with
Yeah.
county staff.
So, I mean, we can go ahead and vote on this if you guys want.
If I can jump in, full disclosure, I represented the seller, the Moyer Property Family Trust that owned that, and it was sold based largely on the value of what the underlying land use designation was. Because
Right,
so much of that parcel was designated for green space, it was clear that there was only a certain amount of value there. So I'm just weighing in on that.
Yeah, so I guess that just goes to show that this is a moot point. I mean, unless they're going to sell it again.
Well, unless it creates a windfall for the landowner with tax dollars that might not be appropriate. I don't know. So I'm just.
We can go ahead and vote. It sounds like you and David might not even agree on this one.
I know, that'd be stunning, wouldn't it?
So I mean, maybe we should go ahead.
I don't disagree with David that the more you increase the value of the parcel, the larger the tax break that the landowner gets when they put it under conservation easement. He's entirely correct in that regard. I'm just saying, I'm pointing out for the record, for what it's worth, that when it was purchased at a certain price, it was based on the development potential of the property with, I think it had R2 zoning, but that it was clear that even though it was designated for low density residential, that so much of that parcel was designated for open space that it wasn't very realistic that all that much of it could be. So I just want to point that out that.
Jenny.
So.
I think Valerie's correct, and I don't think it's the business of this group to be making a vote based on some intention to increase some property value for someone who has interest in putting it under conservation easement. So
yeah,
I think that if
and
the
the
group
process
wants
is
to
already
vote,
underway.
yeah, if the group wants to vote, then vote. But I think Valerie's been very clear, and Anne has been clear about the process that this property is going on through and where things stand with that.
Is it under easement now or no?
My understanding is it is not yet, but there were a lot of units, I think 60 or more up on the high ground, which backs right up to Old Trail. And those folks have been very concerned for a long time about what was going to come there. So, but as I said, I will update after I check in and see what's happening. Thank you.
Okay. Unless anybody wants to speak up strongly in favor of having a vote on that one, I'm just going to abstain from P3. All right, so we didn't get to our resolutions. Tom, do you want to say anything about where you stand with the one you wrote? And
Yeah, let me just say with the changes that we've made tonight to the plan, what I would do is withdraw my resolution and defer to the one that you and Joe wrote up, because I still think the infrastructure issue is extremely important. And I think your proposal answers that question.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Do you guys want to take another second here, just to maybe put a vote on the resolution that Joe drafted, that I sent out today too, and I contributed to as well. If anybody has comments on that, or if we would like to go ahead and vote on that so that we can put it forward with to the staff and decision makers. Does everybody know which one I'm talking about?
And this has been out for several weeks, not just today.
Yeah, it's the same one that I've
it's
sent
nothing new.
for a month or two. Yeah, it has draft across it. And if we vote tonight, I can take draft off and sign it with our votes.
Well, I'll just say what you know I'm going to say. This is how, if you want to increase the cost of living and make this place even more difficult to move into, vote for this. And, you know, as somebody who will probably, if this passes and and the thought process behind it goes through and works its way through the whole process up to the board of supervisors, you know, I should probably all take you out to a steak dinner, because I shouldn't vote for this from a personal financial standpoint. I should back this 1,000%, but this is not the right thing to do. This is not the way to go about it. This is not good for our community in general. It's just not. It is the antithesis of what we should be doing. But
Well,
I know I'm going to be in a very small minority block. But
do you want to respond to that, and anybody else?
Yeah,
come on,
again,
Tom, let's hear it.
I go back 30 years to when we started this. And when we were working with the county, one of the things the county said to us is that if in fact you change in size from 2,500 to 12,000, what we will do is guarantee we will provide you with is concurrent infrastructure, their language and their meaning, which means that they were going to keep up with the construction. Why did they do it? Because at the time, 30 years ago, the county most of the developments were developing at about a half an acre, so R2. And they knew when they got this, they got two things: more density, and plus they got the neighborhood model accepted by a community. So again, you know, you can say it is, but someone else said, well, infrastructure always lags behind. Well, it does, but the fact of the matter is we have enough development already approved to bring us up to the development potential that the county gave us. We didn't choose the 12,000. The county gave it to us. The problem with Crozet is it's been a victim of its own success. If the county really wants to do something, replicate Crozet, don't ruin it.
Joe?
Yeah, and David, I think, you know, because I helped draft this based on what Tom, you know, had originally expressed, and honestly, I think what I was trying to get at is what I was talking about earlier about Whitegate and this sort of disconnect, right, between the long-term vision of the master plan, which I think should allow for more density. It should have those kind of elements that we're talking about, but also accounting for the fact that when the rubber meets the road at the rezoning, because if you look at, I mean, the resolution talks about when it comes to rezoning, you know, so I'm in favor of the master plan reflecting higher densities to allow for the more housing choice and those things. But when it actually comes to the rubber meeting the road of let's go to the rezoning and say, is it time to actually approve this project with this high of density? I think at that point, it's perfectly appropriate for the body reviewing it, for the planning commission, the board, to look at it and go, well, and Allie, this is the point that Allie has raised before, the master plan is a comprehensive document. Yes, there are colors on the map, but there are also infrastructure projects there to support it. And the master plan itself says part of the thing we're going to do is monitor infrastructure. And so I was trying to aim, that was my goal here, was to sort of split the baby and say, look, on the one hand, yes, I think the master plan should reflect those higher densities, but also in individual rezoning requests, I think it's perfectly appropriate for us to say, please check the infrastructure. If it's there, great. If the infrastructure is there, awesome. Then go forward. Then everybody will be happy. If it's not, maybe it's not the right time to rezone.
So I understand that. I mean, I get that concept, but you've got to admit that sentence is simply a poison pill to be able to shoot down every single thing that's brought forward. It's being used, that same sentence, that concept is being used out in Keswick right now to shoot down projects. It is an opportunity and a poison pill. And there's no metrics to it. That's the other thing. I mean, do we have a metric? I mean, is there anything in here that says we're going to measure a specific thing?
It lists specific projects. It's got 5 projects that are listed that say, please do these things.
You gotta give me a number. And I know you can point at the school, Tom, and say this number of kids, but you know, and I get everything everybody's saying.
Vote.
I'm concerned it's a poison pill, and I'm concerned that, you know, the reality is, like I have said, and I will keep saying, Tom, the infrastructure never gets ahead of a community, because the politicians would be killed if they spent money on things before they were actually necessary. That just never happens. It probably never should. And therefore they always lag. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I do want to wrap up. And I think what I hear and what I think as a community member and what I hear from other community members is that the schools are overcrowded. The Eastern Avenue still hasn't been built. When they close Crozet Avenue for that bridge replacement, how are we going to survive that? Eastern Avenue needs to be built. We need more capacity in our schools, or the whole bubble's gonna burst. So that's where I stand, and I just want to move forward with the resolution. I feel like I'm going to respond to one comment in the chat that the resolutions haven't been spelled out in any online Zoom and can only be found online. I've sent out the resolutions plenty of times, and this is really just a document that clarifies the committee's position and where our votes lie, so that Anne and Jenny, when they go forward with the decision makers and the staff has a clear document with our, where the committee lies right now. So that's why we're going to go ahead and vote on that. And so if you are in support of the resolution that Joe and I wrote, raise your hand now.
Can I ask, why are we cutting off discussion if there's more people who want to ask questions or make comments?
Didn't see, are there more people? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought there were. No surprise, I'm sure.
I'm not trying, it's just that it's 9:15, 9:10, and I didn't see your hand up, that's all.
Sorry, it's okay. I'll just echo, I'm no surprise to everyone, I'm sure. I'll echo what David said. I don't think it's our place to be telling the county supervisors that they should never approve any rezoning projects because of infrastructure lagging. We all want infrastructure. I'm sure if you polled every single person in Crozet, they'd all agree that those infrastructure projects are important and critical and should be funded. And I have no doubt that Anne and her colleagues are working their tails off trying to figure out how to do that. And if they could do it, they would. And they're getting there, but it takes time and there has to be resources for that. And just saying that we're going to not approve any new increases in zoning, even if they match the master plan, I think one is just unrealistic. And I'm not sure that it's consistent with Virginia law. I think the county attorney might advise otherwise. And if we approve it, it then creates a false sense of reality in terms of what might actually happen. I think if it's about a resolution that strongly encourages the board to increase funding for all of those critical infrastructure projects, I'd be all for that. But I don't think it's appropriate for us to for this committee to be dictating to the board or tying rezoning approvals to that. Yeah. But I completely support the strong encouragement for those infrastructure projects to be funded. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any last comments? Because I do want to go to bed. All right, if you are in support of the resolution, committee members, raise your hand now.
I'm in.
I think that's everybody. Sandy had to leave, but she voted yes before she left. Everybody opposed to the resolution? I guess we can.
Where'd Josh go?
I don't know. Yeah, you guys lost Josh there. He didn't vote before he left that I saw, but I guess we'll have him.
Probably yes, but we'll not guess.
We'll not guess. And he was absent, and we're missing a couple others too. So there will be a few absent, but we'll go ahead.
Maybe he could send an email in later telling what he
could. I can get emails. I can ask the absent members to vote by email before we send it forward. Okay, Anne.
And one closing thought on this is that I think the statement is focused on when there's a range in the master plan, not living up to the master plan, but when there's a range, aim for the lower end until we have the ability for people to walk and do the things that they need to do. No one, I think, is suggesting that we're going to go back to R2 everywhere, which would be completely contrary to what the master plan says. So I just want to, that's sort of where I'm looking at this. And you can all put yourselves in the places, no matter how much stress you all have. Imagine how much fun it's been for the people on Park and Tabor, who have had all the residents from Westlake, West Hall, Foothills, all these people driving, and the trucks every day going back and forth for construction for 15 years. And they have no sidewalk either. So this is a really big deal for people. And we're just adding more and more people in there. I mean, there are what, 30 houses going in right across from the park. So and I'm just heartsick that VDOT has decided to change their matches. So our sidewalk plan that we were moving forward with has to now wait again. So anyway, it's like finding blood in a turnip here, and we're just trying hard to do it.
And I can sympathize you with VDOT.
You know, when you change the rules in the middle of the game, I tend to get really mad.
Hey,
So
I'm with you.
we shall
I've been
see.
there and I understand.
Yeah.
I've complained to the commissioner and hopefully I'll get an answer soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Great work on this.
Thank you all. I have to read my little statement that the meeting is over. Our next scheduled meeting is December 9th at 7. Opportunities for the public to access and participate in the electronic meeting will be posted at a later date in accordance with emergency ordinance number 20-A14 and open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. So with that, we can sign off. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for staff for being here for this extra meeting and letting us really figure out all of these things. And we're looking forward to the next chapter, which will be a little bit easier, I think. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Everyone.
Be safe.